Officer Mike Yerko with the New Lenox Police Department. I'm here to introduce Heidi Pagonis from the Alzheimer's Association out of Joliet.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just really quick, I'm going to go over the pamphlet with everybody so you could see where we're at. I'm going to take this really quick. So there's a Know the 10 Signs bookmark that you could keep for yourselves. And then the purple card is our helpline card. And then this card is our trial match card. So for trial matches, these are clinical studies that are done. You don't have to have Alzheimer's. You can opt in or opt out. And this is like volunteer work. So you would sign this card, fill it out, give it to me, and what happens is they send you a list of questions: age, birth date, race, just, you know, what color hair you have, and then from there they'll call you, and if you are fit for the trial, then they will proceed forward. Some of the questions are, do you live in Joliet? Yes. Can you come do this trial? Are you healthy and active? And it'll be something like walking. They want to like monitor something. So again, these are what we do this is for the research that we do have for trial matches. Because right now we got $122 million in funding for research, so we need volunteers, so this is critical. And whoever does it, I'll give you a little brain. And then, so then you have the sign-in form, and then to follow along, you also have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation I will be doing. And then at the end, there's an evaluation, so if everybody could fill that out, that would be great. So welcome to Know the 10 Signs Early Detection Matters. This is sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association. The Early Detection Project is important because currently there's many people that go undiagnosed for many of years, losing just valuable time with their loved ones because they really do not know the symptoms of Alzheimer's. The importance of early detection. So in 2008, the Alzheimer's Association received support to begin an education campaign highlighting the importance of early detection. We are extremely grateful to Jay Smith, whose efforts spearheaded this campaign. Jay's wife, Patty, she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at age 51. So she went 2 years without knowing that she had a diagnosis or any of the symptoms of this disease. So today you will learn from people like us. You're given a unique opportunity because many of these people are going to be having video clips letting us know about their issues with Alzheimer's, how to cope, and how to manage and go along with your daily tasks. And then in the next slide, here's our first video clip. This is Marianne, who is living currently with Alzheimer's disease, talking about the stigma associated with the disease. Thank you.
With a disease that takes your self, that's pretty scary stuff. And I think that the next wave of people, with the help of the association, is going to, the next wave of this disease is going to be to not be the only one you know who has it. You know, that we're going to get comfortable enough, and if we who can speak enough, and people say, well, she's not shirking, she can put two words together, she's still living, she's still out there, he's still talking, she's still writing, and there are people doing all of this, then I think the stigma, because that's a word we haven't said, will be lessened. I think it will be diminished. We don't blame people for having cancer. We don't turn the other way. We have historically done that with Alzheimer's disease. And I think that day is gone, and I think that we who live now and know about this are going to be part of the change.
So as Marianne said, there is different stereotypes with the Alzheimer's disease, and also it's just learning to talk about it and deal with it with others in your family. So let's start by looking at the differences between Alzheimer's disease and versus typical aging. So the myth is having a little dementia is part of aging. But in reality, as we age, many of our physical capabilities diminish. So memory is thought to be one of those capabilities, but having a harder time remembering some things is very different from the Alzheimer's disease. So for many years, we thought that aging included a list of changes, and we believed that having at least some of these changes were inevitable. So a lot of people would say, oh, they're going senile, or another term, hardening of the arteries. Those were thought to be part of the natural parts of aging. Now we know they're actually symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's is a progressive disease of the brain that destroys brain cells, causing problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, the affected person may experience memory impairment, lapses of judgment, and subtle changes in personality. And as the disorder progresses, new areas of the brain are affected. So memory and language problems become worse. So does movement and perception. There may also be disorientation and different personality changes. And dementia is a general term used to describe a decline in cognitive functioning. Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. So another myth. If I have memory loss, that means I have Alzheimer's disease or dementia. But the reality is many people have trouble with memory. It does not automatically mean that they have Alzheimer's disease. Most do not. There are many things that might cause memory loss. So it's best to visit a doctor before you give yourself your own diagnosis, and they will let you know what your memory loss symptoms are. So risk factors for Alzheimer's. There are a number of risk factors for dementia, but most of them will not predict whether or not you actually do have Alzheimer's disease. However, you will know after all these warning signs what benefits you from the disease and knowing the different warning signs. So age is the greatest risk factor. The single most factor for dementia is age. Younger onset Alzheimer's disease is unusual. Its total is less than 10% of all cases. Because women do live longer than men on average, women are at greater risk for developing dementia in their lifetimes. And there are some other issues that factor into the calculation of the risk for dementia. They primarily have to do with education, socioeconomic levels, and those affect people's ability to provide for themselves with good medical care, proper nutrition, and intellectual stimulation. So another myth. If Alzheimer's disease runs in your family, genetic testing will tell you whether you will get Alzheimer's disease too. The reality is, having a parent or sibling with Alzheimer's disease does increase someone's risk of developing the disease, but genetics is not the only answer or risk factor. With the rare exception of younger onset Alzheimer's disease, there is not a genetic test that will definitely state whether you do have Alzheimer's. So scientists have discovered that there is a gene that is linked to a greater risk for developing late onset Alzheimer's. That's the most common form of the disease. It shows symptoms after the age of 65 and is generally associated with old age. Having that gene increases the risk of developing Alzheimer's, but it does not tell you whether or not you will develop this disease. If you are considering genetic testing, be sure to discuss this with your doctor or a genetic counselor. 3 other genes, though, are linked to the younger set of Alzheimer's, in which symptoms usually begin to appear in early 40s to mid 50s. If someone has one of these gene mutations, pretty much at this point you already know that your family has this different mutation, so you would already know at this point. Body-brain connection. So heart-brain connection. There is scientific evidence about dementia that links brain health to heart health. Your brain is nourished by one of your body's richest networks of blood vessels. The risk of developing Alzheimer's or vascular dementia appears to be increased by conditions that damage the heart or blood vessels. These include high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and high cholesterol. African Americans, Latinos, and other groups that tend to have high percentages of hypertension and diabetes need to be particularly aware of these diseases. But when the factors are under control with a good diet, exercise, and appropriate medications, no differences between ethnicities matters. Everyone should work work to see their doctor, have a healthy lifestyle, and you could try to prevent some of these risks. So we're going to get into the 10 warning signs. Early detection comes before an Alzheimer's diagnosis, so it's a good idea to follow these warning signs and don't automatically think like, oh, if I have 5 out of the 10, I automatically have Alzheimer's, because I think I have like 3 out of the 10, so. Warning sign number 1, memory changes that disrupt daily life. So with typical aging, a person sometimes forgets their name and then remembers it later, what day it is or appointment, and then they'll remember it a couple minutes later. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's, especially in the early stages, is forgetting recently learned information. So the short-term memory is no longer there, and they ask the same question over and over again. Others include forgetting important dates or events, asking for the same information like we said over and over again, and then just relying on electronic devices, the appointments on your phone and alarms and all that. So in this next clip, you will see Sue, and she's talking about her coping strategy with Alzheimer's.
Well, I have a strategy I'm supposed to use. I have a hard time remembering to do it. But I have an apron, and I have a tape recorder that I can stick in one pocket, and a pad and a pencil in the other. And if I would just really be good at using that, I'd be in better shape. But that's my strategy for trying to remember what I wanted to do and what people said to me and that kind of thing.
So that's just one strategy that Sue has. Warning sign number 2, challenges in planning or solving problems. So with typical aging, people make occasional errors in their checkbook, but with Alzheimer's, some people may experience incapabilities such as difficulty keeping track of bills, concentrating, and they also, a favorite recipe they can no longer do. I always use the example of my grandma. She had Alzheimer's disease and she lived with us. And she had the same cookie recipe that she used for 30 plus years, knew it by heart, didn't need any recipe guidance, and year after year we started noticing she missed the vanilla or the baking powder that would go in there. And then the cookie wasn't the cookie it used to be, and then she would ask, can I please have the recipe for this? I'm forgetting what goes in it. So that's just, something that's disrupting daily life and something that you're used to is one of the warning signs for this. So difficulty completing familiar tasks. So typical aging involves occasionally needing help, like to use the microwave or recording your favorite TV show. But people with Alzheimer's often find it hard to complete daily tasks like shopping, cooking, personal grooming, or even taking care of their own medical care. Sometimes many people have trouble finding a familiar location. My uncle had Alzheimer's disease and his son lived a mile from home. In the same house for 30 years. My uncle got in the car one day with my aunt and drove, and he ended up being 40 miles away. And luckily, a cop pulled them over and asked if they needed help, and they escorted him back to where they needed to be, but he was 40 miles away, really only supposed to go a mile away. So sometimes even driving becomes an impairment. Here's another video clip with Joyce, and then she'll tell you about her diagnosis.
The biggest challenge is in reading and in doing simple tasks like just counting change. That's really hard for me. I can balance a checkbook. If someone gives me a series of coins, I have a hard time really figuring out how much change I should get. That's so, for somebody with a PhD, that's like crazy. And I think it's hard for me to come to grips with that.
So I always give the example of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We always know to take the knife, put the peanut butter, then put the jelly, and then close the bread. But like those are daily tasks that we use, and sometimes we forget, like our brain doesn't tell us to do that. So we get challenged in different ways. The warning sign 4 is confusion with time and place. So with typical aging, a person might sometimes get confused about the day of the week, but then they end up figuring it out later. People with Alzheimer's can lose track of dates, seasons, and the passage of time. They may have trouble understanding if what's happening not now, but they understand what's happening 10 minutes from now. I always use the example as well. My grandma lived with us, and she knew she lived with us, but there'd be a few times where she would think she was in Greece, and we had to bring her back to, no, you live here. We live in Naperville, we don't live there. So sometimes their brains would tell, it would tell her, like, I'm in Greece, this is my village, this is where I live, but we would have to bring her back to reality. So that's one of them too. Warning sign 5, trouble understanding visual images. So typical aging includes vision changes related to the aging, like cataracts. But with someone with Alzheimer's disease, it's different. Perception and judging distances are very hard for drivers. The use of rear view mirrors with the disease and even backing up, the brain doesn't function, and sometimes it's too much going on, and that causes accidents. So with this, that's one of the warning signs, because it's too much information for the brain to process. So new problems with words and speaking or writing. So typical aging includes sometimes having trouble finding the right word. People with Alzheimer's may have trouble following or joining in conversation. They may stop in the middle of the conversation, have no idea how to continue. They forget a certain word. They'll say, that's a hand clock, but they mean a watch. It's just they struggle with vocabulary. So instead, they start disengaging in conversation and just listen and not want to talk. In this video clip is Joyce, and she's talking about the first time she noticed her warning sign. We'll get there. Or not. Sorry, the videos are, I have to manually hit it.
My sister, who lives in North Carolina, I live in New York, I sent her an email. And apparently she showed it to my brother-in-law. And she called me and said, that email made no sense at all. And one of the things that I neglected to tell you was that I would do write emails, things that normally took me about 2 minutes to do. It would take me a half an hour, 45 minutes. And I'd have to read it over, and there was no guarantee it was okay, so I had another person at work read over it. And so it was hard. It was hard. And that's when I realized I thought my emails were fine. Then my sister started telling me, and everybody, so I said, it's not, things aren't coming out right.
So with Joyce, normal tasks started becoming an issue with her, and she needed to ask for assistance. Warning sign number 7 is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. So typical aging involves misplacing things from time to time, like your glasses or the remote control. And then a person with Alzheimer's disease may put things in unusual places, like the wallet in the fruit bowl. My grandma, she would always leave her watch underneath the pillowcase, and we couldn't retrace the steps because she forgot where she would put it, but because she went to sleep with it at night, she would just take it off and it'd end up underneath the pillowcase. And then sometimes they even accuse others of stealing. If they can't find an item, they think that you ended up stealing it, which we know that that's not the case, but in their mind it is. Warning sign 8, decreased or poor judgment. So typical aging involves making a bad decision once in a while. People with Alzheimer's may experience changes in judgment or decision making. Sometimes it's with money, sometimes it's even the weather. You always think about picking up your loved one. I remember, my grandma, it would be summer and she's wearing sweaters, a scarf, and a hat, thinking it was winter outside. And we know Chicago winter, you can't forget it. And the seasons were vice versa for them. So decreased or poor judgment. Warning sign 9, withdrawal from work or social activities. So with typical aging, someone may periodically feel weary and they don't want to really go out with work, family, or social obligations. A person with Alzheimer's may start to remove themselves from hobbies, social activities, work projects, or family gatherings. They may have trouble staying engaged, even wanting to catch up with their favorite sports teams. They may also start to avoid being social because it becomes harder and harder to follow the conversations. You know, when my grandma was first diagnosed, she started disengaging herself. She used to love going to see her siblings, and once it started becoming harder and harder for her to talk, she started not going visiting with my grandpa. She would just stay back at the house. Warning sign 10, changes in mood and personality. So typical aging can involve very specific ways of doing things, becoming irritable when a routine is disrupted. But the mood and personalities of people with Alzheimer's can change with the disease. It is much easier for someone with dementia to do things in a very routine way. And if their routine does become disrupted, they become very irritable, anxious, confused, depressed, and then it starts, whatever happened to that, like for instance, I'll give you an example. My grandma, if we did not wake her up, give her an hour to get ready, change, have her breakfast, and then let her relax for that 1 hour, her whole day was off the whole day. So she started becoming irritable. She did not want to be bothered with anybody. She started to become very anxious. She would start pacing. So we needed that 1 hour every day that she would get up, get showered, have her breakfast. So with people that have the disease, if they are not in their set routine, the same thing every single day, I would always say it's kind of like Groundhog Day. If they started to go a little off routine, they would have some of these symptoms, these signs of confusion, anxiety. So what should I do if I see someone with the 10 signs? First and foremost, we always say, talk about it. Discuss this with your loved ones, with a doctor. You just want to get the right treatment as soon as possible because it's crucial. And then encourage anyone with the symptoms to see the doctor. So if your loved one comes and tells you, I'm starting to forget, I think I might have a problem, encourage them to go see a doctor. And then getting the right treatment is crucial because with the best diagnosis is when you will know if you really do have Alzheimer's disease. In this next clip, Susan is giving advice to families dealing with this disease.
I would hope that families could be gentle but straightforward. I would hope that they wouldn't minimize the challenge of this or make it larger than it needs to be. So I guess I would say you have to be aware that changes are coming, but they're coming, inch by inch and sometimes foot by foot. But most often, you just have to talk about it. Not to be afraid to talk about it, not to be worried about how to talk about it, but talk about it. Because if you don't, I think that there's going to be 1 or 2 days where you just find there are arresting moments and you have no idea where to put that or how to manage that. Not to be afraid, just to talk.
So as we always say, talk about it. Don't be afraid. Someone will listen and then you could just proceed forward. So now we're going to start talking about diagnosis. After detecting the warning signs, the next step is to get a thorough assessment by the doctor. And the diagnosis might not even be Alzheimer's at all. It can be completely different, but it's best to get a diagnosis. So the myth. There's no point in getting diagnosed because dementia is not curable or treatable. It will just upset my family, so why do it? But the reality is, early diagnosis is the only way for a treatment. It might not be Alzheimer's or dementia at all. Once the person has symptoms from the doctor, they often discover that they actually do not have dementia. But they could have like another illness. Sometimes it could be from having a thyroid problem, or it could be depression. Other illnesses that can cause memory problems can be threatened if not detected and treated properly, like heart problems or high blood pressure, and those have been caused by many strokes. These need to be diagnosed and treated to avoid more serious damage. So it's important to not ignore these changes or assume automatically that it is Alzheimer's disease. The next myth. You don't need a complete set of diagnostic testing to know if you have Alzheimer's disease. You can just try any medication for memory loss, and if it works, it works. Early treatment is best, but you have to know what you're treating. So there are many types of dementia, and they are dealt with differently. A number of tests will be done in order to get the most accurate diagnosis. So again, just talk to your doctor or a specialist, and they will be able to help you with that. And then once you get the complete diagnosis, you'll know how to start treating it and then being able to still complete your daily tasks. Here's the next video clip about Gary and how long it takes to get a diagnosis.
And he actually for 6 months called this mild cognitive impairment. And I kept seeing him every 6 months, and he finally, maybe the second visit or the third visit, he said, I hate to tell you this, but you are early onset Alzheimer's. And I asked him why he didn't say that in the first meeting, and he said to me, a lot of doctors are too fast about assuming that's what it is without further testing, because you can have the symptoms and it can come from the drugs you're taking, and they can take you off those drugs and your mind will be fine. And there's other things that can happen to give you the symptoms of early onset Alzheimer's, and it really isn't. It can be corrected, and he just wanted to be sure before he did anything.
So again, doctors do take the time to give you the proper diagnosis. So diagnostic steps. So experts estimated a skilled physician can treat Alzheimer's and give it a diagnosis no more than 90% accuracy in their diagnosis. But now one single test can prove that the person does have Alzheimer's. So the medical workup is designed to evaluate overall health and identify any conditions that could affect how well the mind works. So the doctor will interview the person being examined, the family members, and then gather all the information that they need about current and past illnesses, and then will ask specific symptom questions. They will do a physical examination of testing of the blood and urine and help identify other disorders from these symptoms. And then the doctor will also do mental status testing, which gives a general idea of whether the person is having symptoms, how they're feeling, if nothing's wrong, what's wrong, knows the date, time, and where they're at. And then they'll ask them a short list of words like cat, apple, park, and then they would have to repeat them. And if they can't repeat them, they would jot that down as well. So in addition to assessing mental status, the doctor will evaluate a person's sense of well-being to detect depression or other mood disorders that can cause memory problems, loss of interest in life, and any other symptoms that could develop with dementia. So the neurological exam is an important part of the physical. With that, the doctor will test reflexes, coordination and balance, muscle tone and strength, eye movement, speech. And then currently the standard medical workup for an Alzheimer's is an MRI scan, but most of the time and less frequently they do CT scans, but most of the time it is an MRI. These images are used to primarily detect tumors, whether it's like from a large or small stroke, any damage from severe head trauma, or just buildup of fluid. Research also has shown that shrinkage in specific brain regions may be a sign of Alzheimer's. So however, scientists have not yet agreed about standardized values that would establish the significance of a specific amount of shrinkage for any individual person at a single point in time. So in the future, there may be a role for these tests in directly diagnosing dementia as well. So this is just talks about physicians, tests can, and then it'll just say information from these tests can help identify other disorders such as memory loss, confused thinking, trouble focusing, because sometimes these disorders also do include, and then it's excess of use of alcohol, medication side effects, kidney or liver disease, thyroid abnormalities, and then problems with heart, lung, or blood vessels. So there are other forms of dementia. We have vascular dementia, which is widely considered the second most common type of dementia. It typically develops when a stroke impairs blood flow to parts of the brain. Then we have FTD. That has symptoms that are normally caused with memory, like apathy, withdrawal, and lack of motivation. And then mixed dementia is Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia combined. Lewy body dementia has symptoms which include visual hallucinations, stiffness, shuffling, shakiness, and sleep disorders, and in real life, they will act out their dreams as well. If you do get diagnosed with dementia, which not everyone does, but for those that are, things can start to, there are things that can be done to start improving function and care. So with an early diagnosis, you can get the maximum benefit from available treatments. You can explore treatments that may provide some relief and help you maintain independence. And then you may also increase your chances of participating in clinical drug trials as well. Here is Justine, and she's talking about her diagnosis with the disease. Hang on.
Early diagnosis is very important, because it's like with anything, if you start early, you'll have more success in the treatment of it. And with Alzheimer's, there is no cure, but it can be made livable. You know, the medication can help you live a more productive life with it.
So medications. There are medications designed to help relieve some symptoms, but not to stop the disease progression. Some medications may temporarily improve or slow down memory loss. Other drugs are available, so you just need to talk to your doctor to see what is fit for you. With an early diagnosis, you can have more time to plan for your future with living arrangements, safety, financial, and legal matters, transportation, and then when you no longer can make decisions, you can have someone else make decisions for you. So like we said, plan for the future, seek legal advice and services, and there also is elder law attorneys who specialize in these areas to help you. And then just know that you are not alone, and just talk about it to your family, your loved one, your doctor. And our chapter provides care consultations, support groups, educational programs, our helpline card that you have. There's several ways that you can keep in touch with someone, and there's also safety services. And there's opportunity to get involved. Every year we have our walk. They kick off in September. You can join a team, or you could be an advocate and go to Springfield on April 2nd for lobby days. So there's plenty of ways to get involved. And then this is just recapping. So if you notice anybody that has the 10 warning signs, make sure to talk about it and then talk with your doctor and find out what's happening. And then early detection does matter, and this is our last video clip with Mimi.
My passion in life is to have people diagnosed as early as I was, so that the good part of their life can be extended. I wear an Alzheimer's bracelet every day that says there's reason to hope, and I think that's kind of my mantra, that, you know, if we can find the people that are out there, get them to a good place where the guy knows, the gal, whatever, knows what they're doing, and get diagnosed and get help.
Okay, so there is a reason to hope, and this is our helpline, and you also have it in your pamphlets. Thank you.